This is one of the longer stories from the Canterbury Tales. Heck, even the title is long. The Man of Law is a lawyer and one commissioned by the king. His perhaps is the story that covers the most ground, and you'll see why I say that in a bit. But before we begin, here's a quick notes about the story. Because the government was strongly tied to Catholic Church at this point, his tale is going to be very religiously centered. Secondly, because of this religious tie, you'll notice a pattern of all the protagonists being very good Christian people and all the villains being not Christian people. This story has not aged the best of the Canterbury Tales, to be honest. Third, in the original story, the plot material is cushioned between what I can only call preaching rants, where the man of law veers off in a tangent away from the storyline to preach about whatever is going on. Since this happens about every other paragraph, I'm skipping over that because it more than doubles the length of the story, and nobody has time for that. This is the Man of Law's tale. A very long time ago, a delegation from Syria travels to Rome to meet with the emperor. When they come back, all they can talk about is how pretty the emperor's daughter is. She, like many other female protagonists in this book, is really delightful to be around. So like several other stories, the Sultan immediately falls in love with her, without ever meeting her, on word of mouth only. However, this is going to cause some problems, since she is Christian and he is Muslim, and Christian rules forbid her from marrying him. So the Sultan, along with most of his court, decides to convert to Christianity. However, this turns out not to be the smartest idea because his mother thinks it will ruin the country since he turned away from the correct beliefs with big air quotes. Meanwhile, back in Rome, a delegation is assembled to ship Constance, the princess, back to Syria. There was some bad omen or whatever, and she does a little bit of foreshadowing while wailing to her father about how she doesn't want to go. However, when has Chaucer let his women characters make their own decisions, so she gets sent anyway. Evil mother-in-law organizes a huge welcome party for all the Romans, with the help of her advisors, and then promptly murders all the Romans, the Sultan, and anyone in the court who converted. But the only person who doesn't die is Constance. Now this seems kind of weird because she's the whole reason anybody got murdered in the first place, but the lawyer addresses it by saying that God wouldn't allow her pure self to be killed by this force of evil, this evil woman, and then he rants about how bad women are for a little bit. Yay to the Man of Law. Instead of getting murdered, she is put on a raft with a ton of food and pushed out into the Mediterranean. For over 3 years, she just kind of floats around, not dying because of the will of God. This, he also references an obscure Catholic saint, Saint Mary of Egypt, to kind of prove his point, but nobody cares about that. So, finally, through the will of God, she makes it to the, at that point, very pagan Isle of Britain. Not knowing where she is, she's lucky that a warden of a nearby castle finds her and takes her back to said castle. She lives comfortably there and makes good friends with the warden's wife. Eventually, both the warden and his wife convert to Christianity. Nobody really knows that she's a princess, though, especially a Roman one, because a lot of the citizens are still really pagan. Meanwhile, the devil is getting pretty pissed at the fact that Constance is preaching all that good virtue in Christianity and is seriously undermining his power, so it makes a good pagan knight fall in love with her. She refuses that particular sin, and he decides to get some revenge on her. He sneaks back into the castle and into the room that Constance and the wife were sharing. The warden was away at this point. But since God is letting nobody near Constance, the knight slits the throat of the wife instead. This leaves Constance as the main suspect in a murder case. The castle warden is understandably mad at her, but she soon convinces him that she wouldn't actually kill his wife. I mean, she's this good Christian lady and all. So, after notifying the lord of the castle, King Allah himself, they put her on trial, and the knight as a witness. After Constance starts weeping and praying, Allah, feeling all that pity, tells the judge to bring out a translation of the Bible, and then the hand of God, well, the book just tells it best. Ahem. A Breton book, translated out of the Holy Bible, was brought, and on the book the knight immediately swore to her guilt, and it was at just that time a hand appeared and struck so swiftly and righteously, hard he staggered, and fell to the ground like a stone. Both his eyes went bursting out of his head, which everyone saw, and knew that he was dead. Man, I just love verse. The court decides that the evidence is more than enough to prove Constance innocent. To add to the happiness of the occasion, King Allah, say it with me now, instantly fell in love with Constance. He converts to Christianity and then marries her. All is going well for once in her life, until Allah has to go to fight those darn Scots, leaving a very pregnant Constance behind. She ends up giving birth to a healthy, bouncing baby boy named Maurice. A messenger is sent to inform King Allah. The messenger, being a lazy drunk, stops to spend the night at pagan mother-in-law's, named Donegal, house. Much like evil Sultan mother-in-law, this other mother-in-law doesn't really appreciate her son's new pious ways. So after getting the messenger blackout drunk, she opens the letter, removes it, forges another that says that while Constance gave birth, it was to a hideous monster. When Allah gets the letter, he is understandably upset, but decides that God gave him the monster baby for a reason and decides to deal with it when he's done smacking heads together. It sends the messenger back with another letter that says basically to wait until he gets back to do anything. On the way back, the messenger stops at pagan mother-in-law's house again, and after getting blackout drunk again, she forges another message, this time in the king's hand, ordering the castle warden to send Constance and little Junior out on a raft on the ocean. Again. So she floats around in the ocean for another 5 years before the raft finally lands in Italy. And she is taken in by another castle lord. Meanwhile, back in Britain, Allah gets back to his castle after the war and politely asks to see Constance and his baby. The castle warden informs him of her fate, and Allah's like, I didn't say that! And the warden is like, yeah, you did. After mourning the loss of his wife, Allah does a little bit of sleuthing and eventually discovers that it was his mother who wrote the letter, and he has no choice but to end her. I mean, he could have let her live, but revenge, I guess. Murdering his mother confronts his Christian beliefs, so after much internal agony, Allah decides to take a pilgrimage to Rome. Hey, look at that! A pilgrimage within a pilgrimage. Interesting. Allah just happens to stop by the castle where a still undercover Constance is living with her son. Constance sees the dinner invitation and wonders why King Allah is coming to the castle that she's living in. She has no idea why, but she wants to. Constance, still thinking that it was the king who ordered her killed, but not knowing why, knows that she can't go to dinner without endangering herself. But what she can do is send her son to dinner. All through dinner, Allah keeps staring at the kid thinking, he looks like me. How creepy. And then later when Allah is walking through the hallways, Constance happens to bump into him, and after shouting at him, he pleads for her to forgive him since it was actually pagan mother-in-law. He asks for her back, and they cry a lot. But the story still isn't finished. Constance's father still thinks she died in Syria, and she hasn't told him otherwise because she doesn't know how he'll take the news. But she decides that now is the time. Dear, we should go see the Emperor. Why? Oh, no reason. I just think it's important. So they go back to the Emperor. Constance reveals her identity, and they have a happy reunion before going back to Britain. And then later, Maurice becomes Holy Roman Emperor. The thing I definitely like about the story is the lawyer's opinion of the court system. If only all legal issues were resolved that easily.